Evelyn. Good evening.
Hi, teacher.
Okay. So, well, today we're going to continue in our first unit of this book. And basically, we're going to continue seeing what we started with, which is actually, no, we're going to be moving on to a different unit, A2 now. And what we have for today is basically the passive voice that we need to review. But of course, we're going to be combining it with some listening and maybe even reading exercises. Okay, do you have any questions before we start?
No, okay.
Okay, good. Then let's start by watching the video. Be listening or actually listening. Let's see.
Tony, I need to see you. I have to bring you up to speed on the Nick Crawford story.
Come in. What's going on?
I just spoke to Nick. He was tricked. The audio file was edited. He didn't take a bribe. It just sounds that way.
Well, what does your audio expert say?
Spencer, the audio guy, he was able to verify that it's all definitely Nick's voice, but he also said the audio file was clearly edited. Background frequencies didn't match.
And he's certain about this.
99.9%. You know these tech guys. They never say 100%.
But I don't get it. Who's behind this?
One of Nick's teammates, Dean Bishop. He resents being in Nick's shadow. He wants to be the only star on the team.
Of course. Bottom line is, being the star is worth a lot of money. Big contract, endorsements.
Yeah, but it's beyond money with Dean. He comes from money. It seems that Dean wants the fame, the prestige.
And he doesn't want anyone to stand in his way. Brutal. So, what's your plan now?
I have an idea. I need some help from Amy.
Fine. You can have another day on this, and we won't run the story yet. But one more thing, Talia. I hope you're not emotionally involved in this story.
Me? Emotionally involved.
I know you want to clear Nick's name because you two have a bit of history. But if you want to have a career in journalism, you always have to remember to stay objective.
Okay. So now Tali is having a conversation with her boss, Tony. What is she saying? What are the news?
Talia says that Dean was what? Dean, Tony, yeah.
Nick, right?
Nick, yeah. Nick was tricked. And she says that the audio doesn't have the frequency, no coordinates with the real audio. Then she explains about the Dean because he wants to be the only star in the team. And then she says that she has a good idea, but then her boss says that she is so emotional with this topic, with this investigation, and the journalist should be should stay objective.
Exactly. She isn't so emotional. What the boss says is that she is emotionally invested, right? She's emotionally invested into the story because she knows Nick and she has some history.
Yeah.
Okay, good, exactly, perfect. So yes, apparently the audio was edited, Nick was tricked, and now it seems like Tony starts to believe Talia, and he gives her another day before breaking the storm. Great. So actually the point that we're going to see, you just used it while speaking. You said Nick was tricked. That is the passive voice. But before we actually see the passive voice, I want to talk about pronunciation as well with regular verbs, the past of regular verbs, like instead of tricked, tricked. We're going to talk about that before. But first, let's answer these questions. It says, what news does Talia give Tony about Nick?
Nick was tricked. Someone wants it to seem like Nick took a break.
Exactly. He was tricked. Someone wants it to seem like he took a break. What did the audio expert say about the recording?
Nick's voice is on the recording, but someone edited the recording.
Exactly. It's his voice, but it's Eddie. Now it says, why does Talia think Dean Bishop tricked Nick?
Dean is jealous of Nick's success on the team, and he wants to take Nick's place.
Exactly. Dean is jealous. From jealousy. Okay. And when is Tony going to run the story?
Today.
You sure?
No, I'm not. No.
Let's play this part again.
I hope you're not emotionally involved in this. What's your plan now?
I have an idea. I need some help from Amy.
Fine. You can have another day on this, and we won't run the story yet. But one more thing, Talia. I hope you're not emotionally involved in the story.
In a few days?
Probably not. I don't know. Tony doesn't explicitly say, right, we're going to run the story in a few days, tomorrow, today. But what he does say is that she has another day and that they are not going to run the story yet. So I'm guessing that we can imply maybe that it's going to be tomorrow, right? If she has another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, this, for example, is different than TOEFL in the sense that in the TOEFL test, we can never make those type of inferences unless they say what can be inferred about when Tony is going to run the story. In that case, if it's an inference question, what can be inferred, what is suggested? In that case, you can do that. You can do that reasoning and be like, okay, so if he says that she has another day, then it's probably going to be tomorrow, and we select tomorrow. But this is actually a detailed question, and it says, when is he going to run the story? And according to the video, we don't really have any information that was explicitly mentioned. So technically, it wouldn't be correct to choose tomorrow. But in this case, well, it's different. But in the TOEFL test, we have to, it's a little bit more objective in a way, because it's whatever they say, or maybe a synonym of what they say, maybe instead of tomorrow, the day after the conversation. But it's never going to be something where you have to infer unless they explicitly say what is inferred, what can be suggested. But for now, let's choose tomorrow. Okay, good. That's perfect. Okay, so now before looking at the grammar part for this lesson, I wanted to take a moment to see a little bit of pronunciation related to the past tenses of regular verbs, like tricked, edited, how to pronounce those words, because it's really confusing sometimes. So let's take a moment to see this. We have the document. Okay. So we have these three words here: the past tense of work, the past tense of play, and the past or participle form of start. How do you pronounce these three words? Can you read them for me, please?
Worked, played, and start.
All right. So the first two were actually great. Worked, played, and the third one is actually started. So what happens? Why is it like that? Technically, there are three rules, but we're only going to see two because I believe that it's easier that way. So when you have a verb that you want to form in the past tense, if the verb ends in the sound of a T or the sound of a D, like for example, start ends in a T sound, right? Start ends in a T. Or other verbs that end in a D sound, for example, ends in a D, right? We have the verb end. So if your verb, your original verb, ends in the sound of a T or a D, like test, start, or end, then that means that you're going to have to pronounce the long pronunciation. That means that you will have to pronounce the E and the D. So that means the third one is pronounced started, right? You actually do pronounce the E and the D, started. It's the long sound. But if your verb, if your original verb doesn't end in a T or a D sound, then you have to find a way to pronounce the D without the E. But it has to be noticeable that you're using the past tense and not the simple present or the basic form. So for example, in the first one, work, right? It doesn't end or in T or D, work. You have to find a way to make it noticeable that it's the past tense. How do you do that? In this case, you're going to have to pronounce almost like a T instead of a D. Because otherwise, if you say a D, then it's not going to be noticeable, right? If you try to say work, that D is not going to sound. It's going to be silent because of the K. The K is a strong sound. K is strong. So if you put a D afterwards, then the D is almost not noticeable. But if you put a T afterwards, then you can hear the difference, right? Between work, I work every day, versus worked. I worked yesterday. So you can hear that K and T at the end. I worked yesterday. So it's just finding a way to make it noticeable that it's the past tense, worked. Now, on the other hand, the next one, play, if you think about it, Y is not a strong sound. It's not like K. K is very strong, but Y is very soft. Play is very soft. So you don't necessarily have to add a T. You don't have to say plate. No need. Because if you just say play with a D, then you can hear the difference, right? If you say, I play soccer, I played soccer when I was in high school, right? I play soccer now. I played soccer when I was in high school. So in this case, you don't necessarily have to use a T. You can use a D sound, and it's going to be okay. So these two rules, to learn to differentiate them, can be a little bit tough by memorizing. So I just want you to remember that only if the verb ends in a T or a D sound, then you have to pronounce the whole thing. Started, ended, needed. But if the verb doesn't end in a T or a D sound, then you have to find your way to make it noticeable that it's the past tense without pronouncing the E. Okay?
Okay.
Is it okay? Do you have any questions?
No, much.
Right? So for example, here we have some examples of verbs that end in a T or a D sound. We have test, tested, and ended. Can you read the other ones? The present form and the past form. For example, need, needed. What are all the others?
Visit, visited, hate, hated, sit, seated, edited, and greeted, and headed.
Okay, great. So for example, this fifth one, hate, even though the verb, actually it doesn't end in a T or a D, right? It's hate. It ends in an E, but it doesn't matter because it ends in a T or a D sound, not letter. So you say hate, you don't say hate, right? So since it ends in a T sound, then you still have to pronounce everything. Hated. So it's correct the way you read it.
Okay.
Now these other ones, this one is okay, but you have to stress the word in the first part, in the first syllable. So it's edited. Can you say it?
Edited.
Right? And this one here comes from heat. It's heated.
Heated. Okay.
Exactly, like a heated, for example. Now, on the other hand, the verbs that don't end in a T or a D sound, you just have to make your way through it and find a way to make it sound like it's the past. For example, we have live, lived. Right? It's not necessary to say lived because it's the V is a soft sound. So we just say lived, chilled, enjoyed. So can you read the four of them, please?
Tried. Right.
Okay, the four of them, all of them.
Okay. Lived, chilled, enjoyed, and tried. Okay.
I'm sorry, Adri, I think my connection was weak. I had to leave for a second.
Somewhat.
Okay, so I was asking you to please read these verbs.
Okay. Live, chilled, enjoyed, tried, cried, studied, and played.
Great. So you hear the difference, right? Live, lived. Okay.
Yeah.
What about these ones? Please read the base form of the verb and then the past. So for example, shop, shopped. What about the others?
Pick, picked, wish, wished, crunch, crunched, walk, walked, work, worked, watch, watched, wish, wished, pick, picked.
Okay, good. Can you please read this one here again?
Watch, watched.
Exactly, right? Watched. You can see, and this one here, remember, walk, walked.
Okay. Okay. Worked.
Exactly. So these, as you probably notice, they end in a stronger sound. It's not like tried, very soft. But for example, shop, the P is very strong, shop. So you have to make something even stronger to make it noticeable. Shopped. But this D, this E is very soft. Try, try. Shop, shopped. You even have that, I don't know, it's like rebounding in a way. So based on that, how would you read these, or how would you pronounce these words? Starting from the first.
Kissed, waited, enjoyed, cried, went, learned, stopped, tasted, noted, founded, adopted, and happened.
Okay, okay. Are you sure these ones here are like that?
Learned, yeah, and stopped, and this one I don't know who can pronounce.
Knocked.
Not. Okay, not.
Knocked. It's like a K and then the D. Knocked.
Not. Okay.
So yeah, great. It's knock, to knock on the door, right? Tocar la puerta. So he knocked on the door yesterday night. All right, very well. What about these other ones?
Finished, dressed, asked, and closed.
You sure about these two?
Dressed, and asked.
If it doesn't end in a T or a D sound, then you cannot pronounce the whole thing. Dressed, asked.
Okay.
Right? What about this?
Opened, wanted, asked, and missed.
Sure about this?
Asked and missed.
Exactly. Wanted is correct because it ends in a T sound, but the other ones don't. So asked, missed. Wanted, opened, closed, asked, dressed. Adopted, it was fine. Handed, because they end in T sounds. Tasted, same thing, it ends in a T sound. Waited, but the other ones do not, they don't require you to pronounce the E. Is it okay?
Yeah, I teacher.
All right, good. So it's just a matter of getting used to it now. Obviously, you don't have to be thinking every time that you see a verb, oh, does it end in a T or a D, and then trying to pronounce it. But initially, it's okay to know the rules. And then you just have to, every time that you hear a past tense of a regular verb, try to hear the difference. Try to be aware of that difference so that then you get used to how the word sounds, and then you can start using it like that. All right, then. So as we were saying here in this video, Talia was using a couple of structures that we're going to see. Let's take a look. Somewhere here. So she just said, he was strict. The audio file was edited. So those two sentences are what we call the passive voice. Do you know what the passive voice is?
No, I don't.
Okay, good. So maybe you can tell me what is the difference between saying, let's say, do you know who edited this audio file? Do we know for sure who edited the audio file?
No.
We don't, right? We don't. So maybe we don't know who edited the audio file. So we could probably say someone that we don't know. We're going to say someone edited the audio file. We don't know who this person was, but somebody did this. Somebody edited the audio file. But if I say the audio file was edited, what is the difference? Why is Talia using the second instead of the first?
The second.
Yes, and why is she using that? What do you think? Why do you think she's using this structure and not the first?
She used second because it's like the audio is the principal in the sentence.
Exactly. The audio is the main thing in the sentence, not the principal, right? The main thing. Exactly it. So in this case, Talia is using the passive voice. This is the passive voice because the important thing in the sentence is not the person who edited the audio file. Nobody cares who did this. Probably it was an expert that Nick, well, Dean and his sister hired. But we don't know, and it's not important who edited the audio file. The important information here is that the audio file was edited. We don't really care about who did it. She doesn't even say by who. She just says the audio file was edited because that's the news, that's the important information. So as you said, the most important thing here is the audio file, not someone. So since the focus is on this part, then we change the voice. And actually, this is called the object of the sentence. The object is the person or the thing or the animal or whatever thing that receives the action. So in the case of editing a video, someone, an expert, edits an audio file. So someone edits an audio file. The doer, the person that does the action or the thing or the object or whatever person does the action, whatever person edits the audio file is the subject of the verb, right? Who we're talking about is the subject. So the person that did the action. This is the action, which is the verb. What did they do or what do? They edit something. And the object is the thing or the person or the noun in reality that receives the action. So this is the doer of the action, the one that edited the audio file, and this is the receiver of the action, the one that receives the action. So the subject is whoever we're talking about, whoever does something, and the object is the person or the thing that receives the action. So in other examples, let's say, before that, she says, Nick was tricked. So who tricked Nick?
Someone?
Someone, I think it was Dean, right? The other.
Yes.
So Dean tricked Nick. Who's the subject in this case?
Dean.
Dean, exactly. How do we know that he's the subject? Because he's the one that did the action. The action is trick. Who tricked? Dean. Dean was the one that did it. To who? To Nick. So Nick is the one that is receiving the tricking. Nick is receiving the action. So that is the object. We have subject and object, the doer and the receiver. So what we do in the passive voice, because this is the active voice, when we have subject or action or verb and object. But when we want to change it to the passive voice, what we do is we invert these things. That means that we can say, Nick was tricked by, right? So we are inverting things. Now the object is not necessarily the subject, but it comes before. We have the action, and then we have the doer, or the previous subject, which is not always going to be there. For example, in this case, she doesn't say Nick was tricked by Dean, because Tony doesn't even know who Dean is. So it doesn't make sense for her to mention Dean. And to be honest, it's not that relevant. The relevant part here, the relevant information, is the fact that Nick was tricked. So what happens is when the object of the sentence is more important, weights more, it's the main thing, as you said, then we use the passive voice and we invert it. Okay, is it okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's take a look at a presentation that I have to see the grammar, how we form the passive voice. Let's see. Okay, so this is what we were saying. The subject of a sentence is the person or the thing that we talk about in the sentence. When the subject does something, we use the active voice. For example, people said, good luck flowers. In this case, what is the subject?
People.
Exactly, the verb is sell, and the object is?
Flowers.
Exactly, good luck flowers. So people is the subject, the doer of the action. Sell is the action, which is the verb. In this case, it's an active verb because it's the active voice. The subject comes first, so it's an active verb. Obviously, this can be in different tense. So we can say people sell good luck flowers, people sold good luck flowers, people will sell good luck flowers, people have been selling, have sold, people should sell. We can conjugate it in the tense that we want with a modal, whatever. And then we have the object, which is the receiver of the action. Okay, and that is the active voice. When the subject comes first, then we have the verb and then the object. So, what about the passive voice? As we were saying, it's used when the subject is not the doer of an action. So since we invert things, now the object comes to be the subject. And we put the receiver or the object as the subject, and we put the doer of an action as the object. So it's basically the opposite. What was before the subject happens to be the object now. I don't know why. I can't. Okay, so in this case, what was previously the subject is now the object of the sentence, and we put it at the end. The verb is still the same verb, but now it's in the passive voice. So instead of sell, we have are sold. We're going to see how to form the passive verb. But basically, that is the structure. We have now the subject, which is the receiver, and then the object is actually the doer now. And that is the passive voice, as we were saying before. So, why do we use a passive voice? The first case is when we don't know the subject of the action. That means the doer. So, for example, when Talia says the video or the audio file was edited, we don't know who the subject of the action was. We don't know who edited the video or the audio file. So she's using the passive voice. That house was burnt down. Esa casa fue quemada. We don't know who burned it down, but it was burnt down. We also use the passive voice when we know the subject of the action, but we don't want to mention it for whatever reason. So what do we mean by whatever the reason? For example, in cases where it's not important. So it doesn't really matter too much who tricked Nick. What matters is that he was tricked, that he's innocent. So we don't necessarily have to mention the doer. Or maybe when we are kind of, let's say, somebody did something and I don't want to directly blame that person, maybe I indirectly said what happened without blaming anybody. For example, I don't know, let's say as a teacher, for example, if you're teaching kids and some kid does something, I'm not going to directly blame that kid in front of the class. So for example, if they break something, if they break the board, I'm going to say the board was broke, because I don't really want to mention who did it for whatever reason. So the mink vase was badly broken. I'm sorry, Mom. So in this case, obviously, this is a kid apologizing to their mom. And this kid probably doesn't want to say, I broke the vase. So he's kind of getting rid of the blame, the responsibility, by saying it was broken. So he's not directly saying, I broke it, it was broken. So he doesn't want to say who did it. And finally, we were more interested in the action itself than in the doer. For example, penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming. So in this case, if this is a text about penicillin, then we probably don't care too much about Alexander Fleming. I mean, obviously he discovered it, but we are talking about penicillin. So that is the main thing. When it was discovered, what it is, what it does, whatever. So this is the important part. How do we do it? How do we change the verbs from an active to a passive voice? Pretty easily, to be honest. How do we do it? We need the auxiliary verb to be. We need to use the verb to be, always use the verb to be. So for example, if we have this sentence, the woman bought a new car. So this is now the subject, this is the action or the verb, and this is the object. This is the doer, this is the action, and this is the recipient. Now, if we want to change it to the passive voice, the woman is going to be the object now, the recipient is going to be the subject, and the action has to stay the same. So we're going to say, a new car. Now, here's the thing. How do we change the verb? Because the subject and the object stay the same, but how do we change the verb? First of all, we're going to use the verb to be, as it says here. But we're not going to use any verb to be. We're going to use the verb to be conjugated according to the original sentence or according to what we want to express. In this case, the original sentence, in what tense is it?
Simple past.
That means that we are going to use the verb to be in the simple past as well. So we're going to say, what is the past of the verb to be? The simple past?
Was.
Was. No car was. And then what do we need? We need the participle form of the verb. Now we have to be careful here because it's not just the past form of the verb. It's the participle form of the verb, which is always the third column in those lists of past tenses. In this case, like, it's obviously not always like this, but in most cases, with some verbs, the participle form tends to be the same as the past form. Not always, so there are exceptions. But in this case, it is. So the participle form of buy is also bought. It's buy, bought, bought. And then we have the object, which is now a new car, or I'm sorry, the woman. And we also use by. If we want to say who is the doer of the action, we can use the preposition by, which means por. So what have we done? We have basically maintained the same tense, simple past, but we have included the verb to be now, and then we have the participle form of the verb. So we keep the verb to be, which we conjugate in the same tense as the main verb in the active verb, followed by the main verb in the past participle form. So was bought, from bought to was bought. Is it okay so far?
Yes.
Okay, but there are some other cases in which the verb, is not the same in the participle form. For example, if I say, I saw, or let's say, someone saw the burglar breaking into, or let's say, someone saw the burglar. Let's not make it too complicated. Alguien vio al ladrón. So if we want to change it into the passive voice, how would it be?
The burglar was seen
Was seen, right?
by some.
Exactly. By some. So in this case, the past tense of the verb see is saw, but its participle is seen. So we have to be careful there not to get confused between the participle form and the past form. Someone saw the burglar, that's in past tense. We obviously keep the same tense. This is still in simple past, but we need to change the verb into its participle form. Same thing if it's simple present, right? Someone sees the burglar. How would it be in the passive voice?
The burglar is seen by some.
Exactly. The burglar is seen by some, right? Now, usually we're not going to use by someone here because it's kind of obvious that somebody saw the burglar, so it's preferable not to use it in some cases. The burglar was seen by the neighbor that lives in this street, for example. In that case, maybe we can mention it. But in other cases, if we don't know who the doer is, then sometimes we don't mention it. The burglar was seen at 12 a.m. Someone saw the burglar at 12 a.m. Right? All right. Any questions so far?
Yeah. After verb to be, we need to use the verb in participle. Yes, always.
Always, very important. Yes. The verb to be can be conjugated in different tenses depending on the context, but the participle form has to stay like that. The participle form always.
Okay.
Okay, let me plug in my computer. I'm running out of battery. Let's see. Okay. So let's practice a little bit now. Now this is only a past simple, but we're going to practice other ones as well. For example, we have the sentence, Egyptians built the pyramids of Giza. So how can you change this into the passive voice?
The pyramids of Giza was built by Egyptians.
Exactly. Pyramids of Giza were built by Egyptians,
Yeah.
right? Because were built by the Egyptians. And we have Columbus discovered America.
America was discovered by Columbus.
Exactly. We also have Cervantes wrote Don Quixote.
Don Quixote was written by Cervantes.
Okay. Was written by Cervantes.
Yes. Wait.
All right. We have Beethoven composed the Ninth Symphony.
The Ninth Symphony was composed by Beethoven.
Exactly. Was composed.
Composed.
Exactly. Then we have Edison invented the light bulb.
The light bulb was invented by Edison.
Exactly. In this case, we do say invented because it ends in a T sound. Eiffel designed the Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower was designed by
All right, the Eiffel Tower was designed by Picasso painted Guernica.
Guernica was painted by Picasso.
Okay, was painted. Alan Turing made the first computer.
The first computer was made by Alan Turing.
Exactly, was made. Walt Disney drew Mickey Mouse.
And Mickey Mouse was drawn, I don't know, was drawn by Walt Disney.
Exactly, was drawn. Drawn by Walt Disney. Drawn. Okay. Hillary climbed Mount Everest.
Mount Everest was climbed by Hillary.
Was climbed. Armstrong explored the moon.
The moon was
Okay, the moon was explored by Armstrong. Spain won the World Cup in 2010.
the World Cup in 2010 was I don't know what is the particular thing.
Won is just one.
Won by
Exactly. The World Cup was won by Spain in 2010. World Cup was won by Spain in 2010. All right. Any questions so far? Everything clear so far?
yes.
Okay. Let's see what we have in our book. All right. So it says, below are 3 pictures from the Riverdale Daily News. First, read each headline and write a correct one above each picture. So we have 3 headlines and we need to write them above each picture. And it says, now discuss with your group what you think happened in each story. Use the passive voice and the verbs in the word pool in your own ideas. Okay, so the first headline says, Ellie Chen named Best Actress of the Year. What picture do you think that is?
The second.
The second, yes. She was named Best Actress of the Year. Then it says SBC Sports buys out Recreation Unlimited.
The last one.
The last one, exactly. And we have bridge hit by a large boat.
The first.
The first. So for example, this is something very common sometimes, especially when we want to summarize information. So let's say headlines in newspapers. Sometimes cut out the verb to be. In this case, it's bridge was hit by a large boat, but it's okay sometimes, bridge hit by a large boat, to summarize the information. Same thing as we do in Spanish, I think, right? Un puente o puente golpeado por bote. We don't say puente fue golpeado por un bote. So sometimes we cut it. All right, so what do you think happened in the first picture? You can use these verbs if you want, or you can use other ones. Try to use the passive voice.
I don't know, like the red car was crushed by the bus.
Okay, good. The red car was crashed by the bus. Okay. What else?
And the accident was caused by the boat.
Exactly. The accident was caused by the boat. All right. What else happened?
I don't know, say distraídos.
Distracted.
Yeah. The drivers were distracted. I know, for the music, maybe.
Okay. The drivers were distracted with the music in that case.
I have a question. We have to use by.
Not always. It's up to you if you consider it's important to say what the doer is, yes. And if you think it's not important or not relevant, then you don't use it. So not necessarily, but depending on the context.
Okay.
All right. What about the next picture? What do you think happened here?
What do you say? Premiada?
Awarded.
The
Award.
the actress was awarded for his last presentation.
Okay, good. The actress was awarded for her last presentation. All right, what else?
I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know, she was reached out by the, I don't know, she was reached out by the academy, for example.
Or maybe her last presentation was featured for the drama.
Okay, good. Was featured for I'm sorry?
Drama.
Okay. For the drama. What about the next picture?
Maybe the co-workers were agreed for the last post.
Okay, the coworkers were?
Um, no recuerdo. Agreed.
Okay. But in that case, I don't think agree you can turn it into a passive voice, right? You could say the coworkers agreed. Estuvieron de acuerdo. They agreed to the deal, for example, right? Or they agreed with the deal. Estuvieron de acuerdo con el trato. But that's not a passive voice.
Mm, maybe she was selected. I know for the first woman in posted in sports section.
Okay, good. She was selected as the first woman in the sports section. Okay. It says that, I don't know, one company is buying out another company. So probably some workers were fired, right? Some workers were fired, fueron despedidos. Maybe some other ones were hired. Okay. Anything else you can think about?
Mm, the workers um, no, I don't know.
Okay, all right, no problem. Okay, good. So that's the passive voice. It's generally used in writing more than speaking, but in speaking as well, especially when we have those uses, when we're focusing on the object rather than, or the recipient rather than the doer of the action. But I think it's going to be a good grammar lesson for your writing, especially. So what do you think, Adri? Do you have any questions?
No, not it's clear.
Okay. Were you able to acquire the book?
Yeah, I actually paid this morning, but I don't have access yet.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm going to remind them to see if something happened. But either way, I'm going to be assigning it. I think the previous assignment was for tomorrow, so you still have time to do that. No, I need these 2 days as well.
Okay.
Adri, do you have any questions before we go?
No, no teacher.
All right. So please don't forget today's daily survey as you go.
Okay, teacher. Don't.
Bye bye. See you tomorrow, Adri.
Thank you.